Hey guys, I'm Eric and this is Music Theory Breakdown. This is part 2 in my series on the Nashville Number System, and today we're going to talk about chord progressions. The Nashville Number System is mostly a world of chords. That's where it's going to give you the most benefit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take everything that you learned in the last video and we're going to apply it this time, so make sure you watch that one. In this video we're going to cover the 3 different types of chords. We're going to talk about the actual number system itself, and one of the most important things, we're going to talk about musical key and how you know what key you're playing in. One of the big benefits to the Nashville Number System is it gives you the ability to quickly change in between keys, and so I want to get you on the fast track to understanding that. Like I always do, I'm going to teach you with an instrument in hand so you can take the concepts that you're seeing on the screen and start turning them into actual music. So with all of that said, let's get started. Welcome back everybody to part 2 in our series on the Nashville Number System. And of course today we're talking about chord progressions, and for me this is where it really gets fun and this is where it really becomes useful to know this system. As a quick reminder, if you haven't already, go watch part 1. So if you just stumbled into this video, you're going to need to watch that in order to understand the stuff I'm talking about in this video. A couple other quick side notes here. I hate to assume anything about my viewers, because I'm trying to present all my videos in a logical order where you can understand every concept building on the next one. And in this particular case, I am skipping a couple steps. Not a lot, but I am going to assume a couple things about you as the viewer. Number one, that you play some kind of instrument, you're at least a little bit familiar. You don't need to be an expert, just that you play, piano or guitar or something. Number 2 is that you know what a chord is. Up to this point, we've dealt with just individual notes. Well, now we're going to start dealing with chords, when chords are just more than one note played at the same time. The last thing is that hopefully, or ideally, that you've played along to like a lead sheet or a chord chart of some kind. So not a real high bar. I feel like this is pretty reasonable. If you're watching this, you're wanting to learn music. I'm assuming you've probably already done at least a little bit of this. And if you haven't, if you're brand new, you could still watch this video and you'll still pick up on the concepts just fine. I just wanted to put that out there as a disclaimer. So the Nashville Number System. This is a world of chords, and that is why this is such a useful system, is because most songs are written using a series of chords, and this is true of essentially every style of music that there is. So there are 3 types of chords, and only these 3 types. They are major, minor, and diminished, okay? And there's no such thing as like a neutral chord. It has to be one of these 3 types, okay? So our major chord tends to be this something that's very strong, okay, very optimistic, kind of a happy sound, sort of a big, full sound. The minor chord is this more serious, kind of more somber, maybe even kind of a sad sort of sound to it, okay? And the diminished chord tends to be this more unstable, sort of a eyebrow-raising, sort of mysterious-sounding chord. And I want to say this right now, is don't let that scare you. Don't let the diminished chord scare you as you're watching this video. You can still totally understand the system and everything I'm about to say. This is a fairly uncommon chord to play in a lot of popular music. It is very common in like jazz or classical, but it's not like critical that you can play like a bunch of diminished chords in order to understand what I'm going to teach you in this video. This will also be useful to you. So next thing here, this should look pretty familiar from our last video. This is, of course, our major scale with the scale degrees in there, and this is our C major scale underneath that we are so familiar with and love to play because there's no accidentals in it. And up to this point, we have dealt with, we've looked at each of these numbers and each of those letters, those notes down there as just that, as individual notes. So, scale degree 1 is 1 note, and scale degree 2 is just a D note. Scale degree 3 is just our E note, okay? Well, what we're going to do now is we're using this same grid, this same system, but we're going to start looking at these instead of as just individual notes. These are now all going to represent chords, okay? So now instead of note 1, we've got chord 1. Okay, instead of note 2, we've got chord 2. Okay, instead of note 3, chord 3, and so on down the line. So the question then is, okay, if C is now a chord, and it's going to be our 1 chord, and 5 is now a chord, and it's now our 5 chord, well, what kind of chord are those going to be? Because remember I said it has to be either major, minor, or diminished. Okay, well, here we go. This is the Nashville Number System. The way to memorize this, and the way that I tend to think of this myself, is that my 1, 4, and 5 chords are always major, okay? 2, 3, and 6 chords are always minor, and then the 7 is just the one lone diminished chord. And again, that's uncommon. Don't let that like scare you. And so in the same way that it can, our major scale is universal, applied to all the 12, major scales, all the 12 keys. This is going to apply to all 12 keys as well. As a quick side note, if you for some reason go into a formal education setting for music, if you're going to college or private lessons or something, once you really get into theory and you start analyzing stuff, to represent chords, they're going to make you use the Roman numerals. And to represent, individual notes, the scale degrees, they're going to make you use just the regular numbers. Nashville numbers is a little more casual, and myself and most people tend to just use the regular numbers to represent the chords anyway. So sort of just a side note, but I thought I would throw that in there because I went to music school myself. So at any rate, next thing we need to talk about are keys, and this deserves its entire own series. It's a fairly nuanced and somewhat complex kind of concept, and I haven't yet made the videos to sort of explain all this, but I will. But right now what I want to do is give you just a real basic framework for keys, so you know what key you're playing in and why this is important. So there's 12 different notes in our musical alphabet. We've covered that. That means there's also 12 possible major scales. Well, you guessed it. That means there's also 12 possible major keys. Okay, so here's again our major scale and the scale degrees. And we, of course, you put whatever of those 12 notes you want up front, and that gives you your major scale. Okay, well, something I mentioned before is that each of those 12 scales, they all have a unique combination of 7 notes. And so here's our C major scale. This scale, the order and the notes that I've playing here are unique to the scale. And up to this point, we've said that defines the C major scale. Well, more than that, that actually defines the 7 possible notes that you can play in the key of C major. Now, the same idea is going to be true, but now also with the set of chords. 1, 4, and 5 are major, 2, 3, 6 are minor, 7 is diminished. These are now the chords that define the key of C major. And so the rule sort of works like this, is that if you're playing this set of chords, you're playing in C major, and these are the only chords and the only notes that are available to you. Okay, that's the rule of thumb. Rules are meant to be broken, especially in music, and you will find as you kind of progress that this sort of set of rules gets broken often in order to add flavor and interest in music, but we'll talk about that more later. For now, you just want to know that if you're playing this set of chords, you're playing the key of C major, and if you're playing those 7 notes, again, C major. Okay, so let's kind of break this down a little bit more. So we use our major scale, come up with 7 notes. We assign those 7 notes their proper numbers, and we assign those numbers their proper chord type, okay? And that kind of gives us the definition of a key. This is true in all 12 keys. Here's our D major, again, whole half. We got our D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, C sharp. We assign each of them their proper number, and then we assign each of those numbers their kind of chord quality. Okay, so now we know in the key of D major, if I said, we're in D major, play me a 5 chord, you would know to play an A major chord, okay? And of course, our D is our 1 major chord, so on and so forth. You get it just kind of by looking at it. So what I want to do for you, though, is I want to give you a quick exercise. I'm going to ask you to play me a chord progression, and you're going to kind of start to just intuitively figure out how useful this actually is. So the chord progression I'm going to give you is, I'm going to give it to you in numbers. I'm going to ask you to play me a song, and the song goes like this. It's going to be 6, 4, 1, 5. Okay. And of course, giving you the cheat sheet, very important, giving the legend up there. And you know that your 6 in key C major is A, and your 6 chord is always minor. Your 4 chord in this case is going to be F, and your 4 chord is always major. Your 1 chord, C major, that's the key we're playing in, and your 5 chord is going to be a G major because 5 is always major. Okay. And so I'm going to ask you to, play me that progression 6, 4, 1, 5. You now know to play A minor, F, C, G. All right? Okay, so pretty straightforward. Now what we're going to do is I'm going to assign you that same chord progression, but I'm going to ask you to play it in a different key. And we're going to do this from the ground up. So that key is going to be E major, the key of rock, if you will. And again, from the ground up, you find your E major note, use your E major, your major scale formula. You're going to come up with E, F sharp, G sharp, A, B, C sharp, D sharp. It's going to sound like this. Okay. And you're going to assign each of those notes their numbers, their scale degrees. You're going to assign each of those numbers their chord qualities. And now we have discovered both the chords and the notes that define the key of E major. Okay, so in this case, if I were to ask you to play play your 5-chord E major, to play your a B major. Okay, now I'm going to assign you the same chord progression. Okay, 6, 4, 1, 5. And again, you still have your legend up there. All right, so here we go. So our 6, of course, is going to be a C sharp, and 6 chord is always minor. Our 4 chord, in this case, is going to be an A, and then 4 chord is always major. E, of course, is the key we're playing in, our 1 major chord. Our 5 is going to be a B, and 5 is always major. So if I ask you to play a 6, 4, 1, 5 chord progression in the key of E major, you would know to play a C sharp minor to an A, to an E, to a B. Okay? And so let's compare these two songs that I asked you to play. They're really the same song, just in different keys. The chord progression was the same, 6, 4, 1, 5. One was, of course, in the key of C major. The other one was in the key of E major. Now, so what's changed and what's the same? You might remember this from the last video. When we played the major scale here or here, what stayed the same was the distance between each of those notes. There's a relationship from note 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 and so on and so forth, and that stayed the same. The set of notes I was playing is what changed. Well, the same thing is true here, kind of with these chords and with the different keys. The feeling that you get when you hear, 6, 4, 1, 5, okay, and the key of C is a similar feeling, to 6, 4, 1, 5 in the key of E major. Okay, and so what has stayed the same in this case is the relationship from chord to chord. So from 6 to 4, from 4 to 1, from 1 to 5, that is what's fixed, okay? And the reason this is important is what this does for you is with a little bit of time and some practice, some ear training and stuff, you will start to hear songs based on this set of numbers. And the cool thing is eventually you'll just be able to play those songs just as soon as you hear them. When I listen to the radio now, I've been doing this for quite a while, I'm hearing, lyrics and music and stuff, but I'm also hearing just in the back of my mind, okay, well, that's the 2 chord, and here he goes to 4, and he's going to 1. And more than that, since I've done this a lot, I know what chord progressions are common, and I can actually kind of anticipate what chords they're going to play next. And so the cool thing is you hear that song, you can play it almost immediately after you hear it. So very cool skill to have. Nice. It's a nice thing to possess as a musician. It makes you feel very confident, and really kind of takes all the mystery out of how do I play this, that, or the other. So the important thing I want to again point out is this graph. The 2, 3, and 6 are minor. 1, 4, 5 are major. 7 is diminished. This is what you're really going to take away and memorize from this video. And of course, that graph and several others are available in the Nashville Numbers cheat sheet. Again, free resource to you. There's going to be a link down below. You can have it in JPEG or PDF. This also has something I'm going to talk about a lot in the next video, which is a cheat sheet for all 12 keys. Okay, and speaking of, part 3 coming up here next week. I'm going to show you how to actually use the Nashville Number System. So now you get how it all works, but now I'm going to show you how to make this very useful and very practical to you. And we're going to go over lead sheets, and we're going to talk about how to actually take this system and start committing this stuff to memory in a really easy, very fun kind of way. So of course, if you like this video, comment, subscribe, all that jazz, thumbs up, thumbs down, and please, for real, in the comment section, let me know if you feel like this was helpful, and let me know if you have any more questions, that kind of thing. Also, if you haven't, check out the Facebook page. Again, there's a link in the description below, and I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I also hope to see you in the next one.